Good morning, Sociology. So today is the lecture that is on the additional chapter that I've incorporated into our semester on intersectionality. So last week we went over social stratification as well as the inequalities, the major inequalities that we study in sociology and that affect our lives, okay? Regardless or not, whether or not we see them affecting our lives. So last week, again, we went over all the isms. So racism, sexism, classism, ageism, ableism, I'm missing one, heterosexism, okay? So those are them. So again, inequality based on race, class, gender, sexual orientation, age, and ability, okay? This week, we're going to see how those merge in a concept we call and we refer to as intersectionality. Sound good? So you guys have the reading to do this week. If you didn't do the reading from last week, this is the week to catch up. So get to that, right? But we add on just an additional chapter on intersectionality. And again, you will not be able to find it in this textbook. It's not in it, right? It's in an old textbook that I used to use in my class in this, okay? So of course, I didn't want you paying like over $100 for this. So we're using it for this class. Sound good? So let's get to it. This lecture, again, I don't know how long this lecture is actually going to be, but the slides, there are just 10 of them. And I'll fill in where I need to fill in. But one of the reasons why this is taking so long is because I wanted to kind of make sure, and I guess that's the difficulty with this semester, it's not face-to-face, so it's hard for me to gauge whether or not you guys know what these things are, right? Of course, not all of us are going to experience them because not all of us are either Hispanic, not all of us are Black, not all of us are straight, heterosexual, not all of us are able-bodied, okay? But I do want you guys to try to, I guess nobody will ever understand what it is like to be in your body, but I want you to try to not understand, but see maybe where other people might be coming from when it comes to these things. And hopefully this lecture can kind of bring all of that together. Sound good? So let's get to it right away. Let me share my screen with you guys. So there are some additional terms that we will start, that I will incorporate into this lecture. These terms were not mentioned in the previous chapters. We've gone over racism, discrimination, prejudice, chauvinism, all of those terms, but there's some additional terms that I need you guys to pick up on, right? And we've been hearing these terms, okay? So, yeah, let's begin, okay? So this week we are obviously going into intersectionality. We're gonna define that. I'm titling this Intersections of Race, Class, and Gender, just based off of the chapter that I pulled out from this book on intersectionality, okay? So each individual simultaneously occupies positions of advantage or disadvantage within systems of inequality. Remember those systems from last week, okay? So once again, each individual simultaneously occupies positions of advantage or disadvantage within those systems of inequality organized around differences in class, race, gender, sexual orientation, age, and a state of able-bodiedness. The position each individual occupies in this matrix of systems of inequality are important, and we're gonna go over why those are important, okay? And the importance of these positions will vary, again, based on the situations that you find yourselves in or the situations that you are currently in, okay? Patricia Hill Collins is one of our sociologists that we are introduced to in the specific chapter. She is the one who coins the term intersectionality, okay? And again, we're going to define that. In recent decades, social justice and how sociologists look at it and create change has been built on the foundation that privilege and oppression are connected to form an interlocking system of power that impacts us all in multiple ways every single day. Most of us are privileged in some ways and oppressed in others. So here's where I want to introduce some terms, okay? Last week, we went over racism. In that chapter, we also encountered the term white privilege, okay? But I want to single out that term privilege because our book doesn't define it, okay? What is privilege? I want you to think about it for a second, okay? Now, our book, this was the other one, our book states that white privilege is a term that refers to the social advantages provided simply by race, okay? So social advantages that your race, being white, provides you simply by being part of that group, okay? That's white privilege. So privilege on its own would be social advantages or a social advantage, okay, that exists simply by being part of a group, okay? Privilege on its own. So when we're talking about white privilege, we're specifically talking about a privilege that is based on being part of the dominant group in society. Remember, social stratification in sociology. The way that this type of hierarchy is organized in society, white people occupy some of the top positions, most of the top positions in society, okay? Does that mean that there cannot be other types of privilege? Of course not, okay? You could be privileged based on, again, a different type of inequality that affects somebody else adversely. So there could be a privilege that you are afforded because you are part of the upper class. There could be a privilege afforded to you because you are able-bodied, because you are heterosexual, because you are a man. Sound good? Make sense? Okay? So that's privilege, okay? So we know what white privilege is. We know what privilege is and means on its own. And we know that there are other types of privilege in society, okay? One of the things that we also learn after reading this chapter on intersectionality is specifically that Peggy McIntosh, which there's a slide on her, okay, notes that white skin privilege exists for whites regardless of their economic status, okay? So white skin privilege exists for whites regardless of their economic status. So regardless of whether or not you are part of the working or poor class, regardless of whether or not you are part of the middle class, your race benefits you. In other words, there are certain types of privilege, white privilege being one of the main ones, that will oftentimes trump other types of statuses. Okay? We'll get to an example of that at the end, because your book gives examples of that. Okay? So for some of you right now, you might be saying, no. There's, Black people in the upper class. There are, people of different sexual orientations in the upper class, etc. Yes, there are. Okay? But many of our real life examples, many of the events that happen in real life, in real life show us that when it comes to minorities, and I'm talking about again, this is where reading is fundamental and also understanding is fundamental. Real life events, occurrences in my life and many people of others, different backgrounds, so I'm not necessarily talking about race right now, has shown us that oftentimes it doesn't matter if a person of color has a degree, a PhD, doesn't matter if somebody who is a woman has a PhD, has all of these credentials, white skin. If you go into that job with white skin, you are most definitely coming out with that job like that. Okay, there are certain studies, and I'll put it in the optional. One of them is are Lakeisha and Jamal less employable than Aaron and Eric? Something like that, where they take these individuals, they send out 4 types of resumes to all of these jobs. And again, Lakeisha, Jamal, Eric, and Aaron all have the same credentials, all have the same degrees. The only thing that is different on their applications, because they're not giving they're not giving race, are their names. And what we find is that employers often attach race to names. Okay, so when I say Lakeisha, what race are you thinking of? Okay, when I say Jamal, what race are you thinking of? If I say Jose, what race are you thinking of? Now you might be smiling, okay? It might be a nervous laughter, but we do this not necessarily intentionally. So I'm not saying people are bad, but instantly when it comes to certain names, and if we link race to them, okay, this specific article, this specific study, and it's done every couple of years, shows us that employers are more likely to hire regardless of a criminal background. Because some of these resumes, again, the name was the only thing that was different. If you had a white sounding name and a criminal background, you were more likely to get hired than Jamal was with a PhD. Okay. So I just went over privilege. Okay, so the white skin privilege, getting back to that, Peggy McIntosh says that white skin privilege exists for whites regardless of their economic standing. Okay. If we take out economic standing, it might change. Probably will. Okay. So there are certain types of privilege that will trump others, but white skin privilege in the foundings of the United States has always been something that is valued, has always been something that is powerful. Good? Okay. Now, I just want to go over 2 other terms, mistreatment and oppression. Okay? These 2 terms cannot be used interchangeably. we need to know the difference between these two terms, since I'm just going to refer to you guys as sociologists, since I'm teaching the class, okay? So what's mistreatment? And what is oppression? Okay, let's go over mistreatment first. Mistreatment, again, it's not defined by your book, but you can do a simple Google search, or you could dictionary, okay? But mistreatment is just improper treatment, right? So wrong practice or unjust practices against an individual. Simple, okay? That's mistreatment. Oppression, on the other hand, is the exercise of authority or power. The exercise of authority or power, okay, over a group of people that makes life burdensome, that makes life almost unbearable, that makes life unjust. Get it? Okay, so the difference between those two is the use of power. Okay, make sure you guys keep that in mind. Okay, so continuing on with Patricia Hill Collins, put another way, for every act of oppression, is this recording? I hope this is recording. I'll figure it out at the end. I don't know if this is recording. Okay, I hope this is recording. Put another way, for every act of oppression, there is an interconnected act of domination. Patricia Hill Collins referred to this idea as the matrix of domination in her 1990 publication, Black Feminist Thought. So social location or social locations are the aspects of ourselves that largely determine how we navigate the matrix of domination that Pat Hill Collins describes in the chapter that you are reading for this week. She likes to think of it, and again, I just took this from the chapter. She likes to think of social location as the modes of transportation that each one of us uses through our experiences of power and privilege, or powerlessness and oppression. Okay? Let's think about that, okay? So social locations, where we find ourselves, okay, are the aspects of ourselves that largely determine how we navigate the matrix of domination. I'm gonna use me as an example, okay? In today's society, and I'm talking about 2020, things are very tense. I would say things are very racially tense, and things are very economically tense. So class is a big, and gender, okay, are major aspects in my life, okay? Today, because of the COVID situation, and I'm going to use the first example, I'll do two examples, but the first example I'm going to use now is based on my gender, okay? So based on my gender and my race, okay? So this is the first example. Since we've been out of lockdown, and Massachusetts has been on lockdown since, I believe, around March 12th, and we got out of it March, April, May, I believe we started getting out of it in June. You will not catch me out on the street alone once the sun sets. Okay? Why do you think that would be? Okay, because I am talking about how I navigate through this matrix. Why do you think that would be? Okay, and it's heightened more, right? Think of some of the suggestions that we give women in life that we think are beneficial to them. You know, don't go out on the street alone by yourself, you know, etc. Okay, so my social location Okay, these aspects of myself, me being a woman and me being Black, okay, largely dictates what time you'll catch me out in the streets, especially today. Okay, once it starts getting dark, like once I see the sun setting, and I'm that type of girl, like the sun is setting at 3:29, I gotta be in. I gotta hurry up and get home. Okay? If you don't have to think about that, that is a privilege for you. I do. Okay? And it's based on the stereotypes. And again, it's not stereotypes that I haven't experienced myself, but I've had men try to pick me up at night thinking that I am, I don't know the proper term to use. I would ask in class if it was appropriate, but a sex worker. Okay, I don't like that feeling. And because I'm navigating this matrix of domination, I know for my comfort level, it's not even a comfort level. It's a privilege if you don't have to navigate those kinds of lines in life. Okay, most women do, right? Don't stay out too late, you know, etc. There are also certain ways. So if that wasn't clear, here's another example. Okay, how many of you have to? So my brother, so we are, again, teachers in my household, some of us professors, some of us work in secondary education. But some of us resell sneakers. So we'll purchase sneakers online and resell them. Sometimes we will purchase things in store, have certain high-end stores hold these items for us. We purchase them and then we sell them for a higher price online. Okay, trying to get those multiple sources of income. Okay, but how many of you guys have to put yourselves together so it looks like you have money? It looks like you have money before you enter a store, because you know that the way people view you, the way people view your skin, it looks like you may not have money. How many of you guys have to adjust the way you look? So before you walk into the Burberry store, you've got to get dressed up. You got to make sure your hands are not in your pockets. You got to make sure you code switch. And when I say code switch, you know, like the way I'm talking right now, it might seem very proper. But I guarantee you, this is a certain type of code switching that I'm doing. I don't talk like this in my everyday, like hanging out with people that I truly like bond with. You know, like once I get off of this laptop, it's like, girl, you know what? It's really just relaxed. It's not ghetto, it's relaxed. I'm talking the way that I want, that I feel comfortable with. But I can't walk into a store like that. I want them, and I shouldn't have to. This is the thing, I shouldn't have to adjust the way that I am for me to visit your establishment. Okay? If you don't have to do that, that's a privilege. Okay? One of the best shows that show how privilege works is What Would You Do with John Quinones? Okay? And yeah. There is this episode with the bike, this kid who's stealing a bike. So they changed the actor who's stealing a bike. At one point, it's a white person stealing a bike. At another point, it's a black person stealing a bike, okay? And everyone calls the police on the black boy stealing the bike. But you actually have people who are visiting this park who actually assist, not knowingly, because that's a white skin privilege, right? Who assist this white kid stealing the bike. They don't call the cops on him. But again, there's that white skin privilege. They also flip it and make it women stealing the bike. And women are also found to have a certain type of privilege when it comes to doing evil deeds in a park. That's a good example, okay? So you can actually click on this slide. You should actually have access to this slide right now in the Dropbox that I've linked on Blackboard. I want you to read the privilege article by specifically Peggy Hill McIntosh. Think about it, okay? Does your skin, her article is just on white skin privilege. I'm gonna upload some other ones on different types of privilege. Are you afforded certain types of privilege because of your race, your class, your gender, your sexual orientation, etc.? Okay. Let's look at some examples of how intersectionality works. Sound good? So quickly, just before I get to that example, I just wanted to insert here. So of course I stopped sharing the Blackboard. I just want to make sure that you guys get what intersectionality is. Again, when it comes to intersectionality, we are talking about the interconnected nature of social categorization, okay? Such as race, class, gender, sexual orientation, age, that are regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage, okay? So when it comes to intersectionality, this is really a framework by Patricia Hill Collins, for conceptualizing a person, groups of people, or social problems as affected by a number of discriminations and disadvantages, okay? So in other words, it asserts that people are often disadvantaged by multiple sources of oppression: their race, their class, their gender, their sexual orientation, their religion, other identity markers, okay? So I hope you guys understand that. Intersectionality as well recognizes that identity markers, again, such as being a woman or such as being Black, do not exist independently of each other. They're interconnected, okay? And that each informs the other, often creating a complex convergence of oppression. So being a woman is already hard enough in 2020, but being a Black woman makes it harder. And imagine if my sexual orientation, if I was a lesbian, that'd be even harder, etc. Okay, so for instance, a Black man and a white woman, not women, but a white woman who make 40 cents, 74 cents and 78 cents, I think is a statistic, to a white man's dollar, okay, respectively. However, for Black women faced with multiple forms of oppression, we only make 64 cents to the white man's dollar. So understanding intersectionality is essential in combating, the interwoven prejudices people face in their daily lives, okay? So again, using that example, a Black man makes 74 cents to the white man's dollar. A white woman makes 78 cents to the white man's dollar. Okay? However, a Black woman makes 64 cents to a white man's dollar. So Black men, white women, Black women are all oppressed. They're all oppressed, okay? However, the oppression, and we're not trying to play the oppression Olympics, it's complex because there are certain identity markers that are favored more so in certain individuals than others. Okay, so a Black man, you know, we don't favor the Blackness, but being a man is good in society, right? A white woman, she's a woman, you know, but she's white. Okay. However, when it comes to that Black woman, she has two identity markers that are already discriminated against in society. Whereas the other two, a Black man and a white woman, have that one identity marker. Make sense? So intersectionality really, again, is important when we're looking at and we're trying to combat, you know, the prejudices that people face in their lives. Okay? Things are complex. Okay, some more so for other individuals, some more so than others. So we're not saying that all people can't be oppressed. That's not what we're saying. That's not what I'm saying at all. Everyone, again, at the beginning of the slide, most people are privileged in some ways and oppressed in others. I just gave you one example. There are hundreds out there. Good? Okay, so let me get back to the slide for you, and I hope that recorded. I really do. But let me get back to the slide. Okay, so again, let's look at some examples as to how this matrix and intersectionality work and look alike, and look like. Okay, so patriarchy in the lives of wealthy white women. That is the first example that is given in the additional reading that I've given you, okay? And again, I'm simply just summing up the examples for you, okay? So women are at risk of subordination within the systems of gender inequality that we have in place, regardless of their class. Again, women are at risk of subordination within the system of gender inequality, regardless of class. Upper class women oftentimes do not escape male domination. For example, although many women of the upper class have white skin privilege, and this is just based on fact, most women in the upper class within the elite are white, okay? So although many women of the upper class have white skin privilege, the demands that upper class men place on them to conform to particular gender roles circumscribe upper class women's life chances. These women will still experience misogyny. Refer back to the chapter on race in this book, okay? They'll still experience misogyny and are expected to conform to what many think are motherly duties and motherly life. So I'm not part of the upper class like that. I'm not part of the elite, okay? So what our authors, so Nurbeck and Glassberg in this text are saying is that although a white, obviously heterosexual couple here are both part of the upper class. So they're both making money. They're both bringing in money, okay? So regardless of class, women, wealthy white women, still have to abide by gender roles. they'll still experience misogyny. So when you and your husband walk through that door, it's still expected of you to cook. It's still expected of you to clean. It's still expected of you to take care of the children, if you have children. It's still expected of you to take care of the home like a woman should. Okay? That's an example of, again, intersectionality. Okay? Again, there are certain markers. Okay, we're talking about wealthy, that's class, white, that's race, women, that's gender. Okay? Wealthy white women. Do you think, and again, do these kinds of exercises on your own. Do you think that this would be different if we switch around the type of woman? Right? Imagine middle class, Asian women. Would it be the same or would it be different? Poor, Black women. Would it be the same or would it be different? Okay. I'm not going to do them for you on camera, but they're similar. They're very similar with very few changes. Okay. However, again, there are certain types of markers that are favored. There are certain types of statuses that have been favored in society over others that cause either oppression and disadvantage or an advantage and power. That's one. Okay, let's go on to the next one. White women employers and domestic workers of color. Okay, so women who are privileged by race and class, that means women who are privileged by having white skin and being part of the upper class, may dominate over other women who hold subordinate positions within systems of economic, so class, and racial inequality. So ultimately, over people who are of the middle or the working class and who are other than white. Here, yes, women can oppress other women. Duh. Sorry, the real shit is coming out. Okay? Women can oppress other women. So, an example of this, okay? Although white women may tolerate or deal with gender subordination in their relationships, so refer back to that example that I had on the previous slide within their own partnerships, although white women may tolerate or deal with gender subordination in their relationships, their race can allow them to dominate over other people in other social locations, such as employing domestic workers. So I hope you guys know what a domestic worker is. So a house help, a maid, a gardener, etc. Okay. So here, another example. It doesn't necessarily need to be, women oppressing women in just this field of domestic workership, right? But this is an example of when Karens come out. Karens, okay? So imagine I'm flipping burgers at or making tacos at Taco Bell, or flipping burgers at Burger King, or behind the desk at Chipotle, right? And a white woman, and using me as just my characteristics, Black woman, just pretend I'm part of the working class. So this customer, a white woman who is part of the middle upper or upper class, is very disappointed in her meal, right? And she immediately goes to me, she comes back to me and just kind of like, I'm disappointed. Can I talk to your manager? At that moment, that is an act of oppression, okay? And not mistreatment. Why am I saying that? Yes, she's disappointed in her meal, but why is it not an act of like simple mistreatment? Why is it above and beyond? And why can it also be harmful to myself? Think about it. Okay? At that moment, she is deploying a use of power, whether she knows it or not. And I believe, again, this is my own personal opinion, a lot of people know when they're doing this. As a sociologist, I refuse to like even acknowledge that people do not understand what they're doing when they do this now. Okay? At this moment, for her to go to my manager, she's coming for my job. She's coming for my job. And if we are really thinking about how the system that we live in right now is capitalistic, and if most of you in this class or some of you believe that the economy is the base and everything else revolves around it, as Karl Marx has stated, she's coming for my livelihood. And many people have come for the livelihoods of Black people in society. And that it's that utilization. Can I speak to your employer? Can I speak to your manager, please? Doesn't even need to happen like that, okay? I probably won't get into it with this specific class, but usually in my spring classes, I'll incorporate a lot tougher types of readings, but many of you saw, I believe I gave you guys the 2 Towns of Jasper. Okay, and there are similar things that happen like that, but when, I won't just say white women, but when, yeah, white women cry wolf. Okay, you have instances of it's before the Central Park 5. If it comes back to me, I will, oh my gosh, 8 boys who were executed because they thought they whistled out of 2 white women. I forget what it was. Okay, but if it comes back, but at that moment, it's an act of oppression. Do we get it? Okay, it's not mistreatment. You're coming for my job. You're coming for my livelihood. Okay? So, although white women may tolerate or deal with gender subordination in their relationships, their race can allow them to dominate, again, this is a form of power, over other people in other social locations. So employing domestic workers, getting their way in certain types of situations, especially when it comes, again, we're in 2020, dealing with the police, okay? Certain educational, that's a personal experience, but you'll get it, okay? Let's look at men of color, so men who are other than white in the lower class, okay? Being male, which is a privilege if we look at the hierarchy and the way that things are stratified in the society, being male, okay, does not automatically mean that one occupies a privileged position in society. You have to think about racial and economic placement, because race and class can oftentimes trump male privilege, okay? So think about, when I say all people of color, I'm talking about skin pigment, obviously. All people of color, regardless of sex, must contend with the prevailing systems of racial inequality in the US, okay? And I just stated that race and class can sometimes trump male privilege. Sometimes being Black and being poor, being Hispanic and being poor, being Asian and being poor. And I'm one of your extra credits this week, this spiritual article. Think of this, okay, and how Asian males are portrayed in the media, specifically the entertainment industry, okay? Most of the time, you will find people who are men of color, and specifically of the lower class, in segregated ghettos. Marriage prospects for these individuals are a lot lower. You will find them within the criminal justice system, usually imprisoned or incarcerated. Joblessness rates are higher amongst these individuals. Obviously, suicide rates also follow these trends, and death rates, okay? So being male doesn't necessarily always mean that you are in a position of power because of other identity markers that you might have, okay? Get it? Racism and middle-class people of color. Even though there are few of color that experience success in the system of economic inequality, of course, there are people who make it, right? Who are Black, who are Asian, who are white, who are from different ethnic backgrounds. People can make it, right? So even though there are few people of color that experience success in a system of economic inequality, it can simultaneously be offset by subordination within the system of racial inequality. So for example, Black and Latino middle class individuals, okay? You cannot, I didn't have you guys read Massey this semester. But you cannot avoid racial segregation, regardless of you making it economically in the US, in Canada, in a system of economic inequality. You cannot avoid racial segregation. Although we want to believe that there is a declining significance of race, the data actually shows that this is not the case, and that Black and Latino middle class men, or people of color, that's what we're talking about, still experience discrimination, okay? What's his name? Donald Glover. And I'm not talking about, let me get a picture up. Donald Glover. I'm not talking about the singer. I'm talking about the actor who lives in New York. So let me give you, you guys may know him. However, I'm older than a lot of you guys. This guy. Okay. He acted in the movie The Color Purple, a lot of Oprah Winfrey's movies. So The Color Purple, Lethal Weapon 4, I think all of the The Predator, Jumanji, specifically Jumanji, the newer version of Jumanji. So yeah, Donald Glover. He, and I believe it's in the text that you guys are reading this week, but he recounts an experience that he had in New York, and he still says that till this day, you know, when he's trying to hail a taxi cab, people still bypass him. Okay, again, think of the stereotypes that we have of Black men in society today. Okay, why would it be that people would bypass him but pick up, you know, some other individual, whether it be Asian or white, instead of him? Okay, race still matters, or people make it still matter. Okay, so there is no declining significance of race. Okay, we still operate under these racial types of codes. Okay, and lastly, the last example in the reading that you have for this week, diverse experiences among women of color. Not all women are the same. Okay, obviously we're not all the same. In the United States, we have this false sense of universalism. We talked about universalism, not in my lecture, but this yellow textbook that we're using this semester talks about universalism in the culture chapter, chapter 3. Okay? In the United States, we have this false universalism, believing that we all have the same problems and go through the same things as women. No. Black women have their own experiences. Chicana women have their own experiences. Women with disabilities have their own experiences. Lesbians have their own experiences. Poor women have their own experiences, etc. Okay? What type of woman are you in this classroom? Are you a Black woman like me? Are you a white woman? Are you an Asian woman? Are you a Hispanic woman? Are you a woman who identifies as something other? Right? So although we might have some similarities, some of us in this classroom might feel that all women should have the rights to discuss and to define and we might believe we have the rights to control whatever we do to our own body. Okay? However, depending on the type of woman you are, you might be oppressed in that decision making that you are allowed to do. If you're paying attention to what's going on in 2020 today, especially with forced sterilization on specifically certain women of color. We're not obviously going through the same experiences. Okay, sorry, I'm getting an attitude. It's not for the, we're obviously not going through the same experiences. Okay. Let's complicate it some more. And I think this is the last slide. But men with disabilities, although they do experience oppression in the matrix, right? You're a man, you have some male privilege, but you're also disabled. There's another, marker that makes it difficult for you. Okay, you're not an able-bodied man, you're a disabled one. Men with disabilities, although they do experience oppression in the matrix, right, in the situations that they find themselves in, they also experience certain advantages over women dealing with the stigma or with disabilities themselves. How? I want to leave you guys with that. Think about it. There are plenty of things that I want to discuss in this class, and it's just hard because I don't know how to discuss them online. So this kind of platform is hard. And I think one of the things that I've learned this semester is that I might just do these Zoom classes for the next semester. I might do them for the next semester. Okay. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Again, you know my email, spierre@necc.mass.edu. Yeah, prepare yourselves for the exam next week. Okay, so there's a lot that we're covering on the exam, but if you've been keeping up, you're doing good. Okay, again, nobody fails sociology unless you want to. Okay, so yeah, have a great day, and I'm uploading this right now. Okay, peace out, bye.